Tesla, who just announced a massive chip deal with Samsung for, guess what? An AI chip, right? It's the AI chip for their cars. And it's funny because they're looking so far into the future that this is the AI 6 chip that they're talking about. They're not even talking about the AI 5 chip, which is currently actually just starting production. But the AI 6 chip is what's being announced here. And they announced a $15.5 billion deal for Samsung to produce these chips here in the US. So this is a huge win for everybody who's trying to win on the US. We know that Elon Musk and Trump kind of parted ways, and Musk was upset because of the amount of debt that the country's taking on. So he said, you know what? I got to go out there and earn some money to pay for some of this. And this is a great example of it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. He's building these AI 6 chips in the US, from what I understand, really close to Elon's house, which he said is oddly convenient. But it's not only a huge win for Tesla, and obviously Samsung is getting a massive contract out of this, but it's bringing jobs to the US, which is kind of a win for Trump, even though it's a win for everyone. It's a win for everybody, but that's what Trump wanted by doing all these tariffs. And we know that Elon wasn't a big fan of these tariffs, mainly because it hurt his personal interests. So in a weird way, this is kind of accomplishing what Trump wanted. Not that bringing jobs to the U.S. is a bad thing, but I just figured that was an interesting little piece there. Now, my biggest question to you is, we're seeing the integration of software and hardware, and I think we've kind of talked about it briefly. You're going to see a lot of these software companies have these insane valuations, and we'll talk about them more. But what I think you're going to see stick around is when you can take software and integrate it with hardware, like a real usable product that the customer can actually use. Hardware is getting phased out so quickly. I believe we both have Teslas that are hardware 3. They're hardware 4. They've already done hardware 5 with TSMC, as you can see here, out of the Arizona facility, which isn't too far away from you. And then now they're working on hardware 6. So how do you incentivize customers that just spent X amount on a car, and now you're telling them that their hardware is going to be outdated by 3 generations? Like, how do you fix that problem? Like, you've done a lot of work with routers and upgrading hardware and things like that. How do you help your customer base not feel left behind?
It's a good question. I'm not sure exactly how, and Musk has promised that he will for people like myself. So I bought FSD, paid full price for it in March of 2020. And so I was a hardware 3 purchaser. So I'm definitely, I'm driving around my Model 3. It's got FSD 12 on it, which is really good. But man, I would love to get the FSD 13, which it requires hardware 4. And like you said, now they're talking about hardware 5, and this deal is for even hardware 6. So yeah, Musk is going to have an interesting time trying to figure out how he's going to backgrade all of these. I mean, it's an expensive upgrade. Most analysts are estimating it to be about $2,500 per car worth of cost. So this is a big deal for Tesla. Musk has promised that he will figure out a way. I'd be curious to see if he honors that promise. In his most recent podcast, I loved his quote because he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said that he's really good at building things, not very good at estimating time frames.
Yeah.
And he listed that as one of his own weaknesses. He called that out himself.
Yeah,
But
totally.
I think this is a huge deal. I think it will be a big win for the US. I think it'll be a big win for Samsung. I personally think that Tesla is one of the closest to real AI. The way they've built their neural network with FSD, the way that FSD has continued to prove out that actually the image works better than LiDAR, which is a super controversial statement that I just made. But there's a lot of actually proof that's coming to show that LiDAR has a lot of weaknesses. And so it's an interesting part. And I think, they're like 6 timesing down now on this hardware to be going this far out into the future.
Yeah.
So what it means for the past customers is going to kind of still be yet to seen.
Yeah, that's gonna be a tricky thing, but at the same time, you don't want to let the past customers hold you back from trying to innovate in the future. So he talks about Samsung's giant new Texas fab will be dedicated to making Tesla's next generation AI 6 chip. The strategic importance of this is hard to overstate. Samsung is also currently making the AI 4. TSMC will make AI 5, which just finished design initially in Taiwan and then Arizona. So he's thinking a couple of years ahead, which in terms of technology and hardware is probably smart, and getting suppliers in order. Like, something that Elon has said himself is that he knows supply chains and manufacturing probably better than anybody on earth, and I actually believe him. Um, so seeing him think this far ahead is really interesting because you can just tell how much money Tesla will continue to pour into R&D when it comes to these chips. And something that I want to go back to this tech crunch piece was the difference with this AI 6 chip is that it's not only going to be AI 5 is primarily built for FSD, but I believe it says the AI 6 chip right here will be FSD as well as Tesla's Optimus humanoid robots. And it's all the way to high performance AI training in the data centers. So you're seeing this merge not just for FSD now, but it'll be included in Optimus as well as their high performance in AI training for the data centers. What are these AI 6 chips going to look like? Like, what's the difference between an AI 6 chip and for example, just for layman's terms, like a lot of people are thinking, oh, NVIDIA H100s. What's the difference between this and an H100? Like, I know it's completely different, but would you mind spelling out the difference for me?
So we don't really know a lot about the hardware on these yet, but we do know one thing is that they've been talking a lot about the integration of Grok into all of their different chips, right? And so whether they're talking about Grok being integrated into the humanoid robot, they're talking about it being integrated into cars, even the Grok rollout. To Elon's point, has been much slower than he originally even said, but we are starting to get people who have it rolled out. Right now, the Grok is pretty much just an API call across the wire, because you have to have their premium data service built into your car. But they're going to try to bring that processing closer and closer and closer to the user. And so this is actually a move that we predicted years ago, but it's one that AI or the Apple missed on. They tried to do it too early. It's the reason we saw Apple Intelligence fail so much. Elon's trying to predict for this in the future. And what he's doing, he's trying to move that processing out of the cloud, out of these huge super data centers, which move them out of those data centers and closer to the individual machines. So this will allow him to do the processing for the AI in the car or in the robot or whatever that's going to be, so that he can do that processing right there. Because the interesting part about this also is that in that bringing it closer and closer, one of the huge limitations that every single big leader of the Mag 7 says right now is that we are hitting an energy problem around the data centers. These new data centers they're building take as much power as an entire city to process. So how do you solve that problem? You distribute it, right? In computing, if we know there's too much processing to the center, we distribute the computing out to smaller pieces. That's what these guys are trying to do by building a really powerful AI chip. That's what Elon's doing to push that processing down to the individual, to the smaller pieces as much as possible. So again, we don't have the design on this yet, but my guess is based on trends in industry, that's what this would do.
Totally. Something I'm trying to find the article, but I can't quite find it. Jensen Wang was talking about how this new NVIDIA chip that they're working on, a big focus was pulling less power from the grid. And I believe I read, I can't find the article right now, but it'd be a 30% increase in efficiency on power. So you probably tell me if I'm wrong, but are you going to see more of a shift from horsepower to efficiency?
Yes, that's definitely where we're going. In fact, Google just recently announced a transformer killer. I'm doing a video on it this week. A transformer killer that's actually going to reduce the base. So when ChatGPT came out a few years ago, the big innovations here was RAG and transformers. LLMs have been around for about 15 years. The technology itself isn't new, but the transformer is one of the things, but it's super processing intensive. And that's what's chewing up all the power in these AI data centers. And so they're going to have to come up with a different way to do the transformer. And that's the race right now. So DeepMind's already working on this. They say they released a paper announcing it. Now, again, it's kind of like solar and battery where you hear these announcements all the time and then you don't really ever see them hit the market. So, I'm waiting to see it hit it. But this is the race, is to bring that processing down. Now, Huang's saying that because they do need more power, and he is going to say that it's going to be more efficient. So far, every single chip they have produced so far has only been more hungry. I know the recent 5 series, people are seriously having trouble powering them. There isn't a standard PC that's powerful enough to process or to run 2 of the 5090 graphics cards. They're just literally like, you'd have to have a 2000 watt power supply, and they just don't even make those. So so far, like Huang saying that, I mean, that's what he's already trying to sell, and that's important for him. And I'm not saying he's wrong, but there's some salesmanship there.
Totally. And while we're talking about Nvidia, I want to go ahead and share this because I think it's absolutely crazy. Nvidia just became the first stock in history to hit 4.3 trillion. A few weeks ago, they were the first stock to hit 4 trillion. Now they're the first stock in history to hit 4.3 trillion. This makes Nvidia $500 billion larger than Microsoft, which is in second place for the largest company in the world.
Yep.
500 billion. Um, the craziest part is obviously the Kobisi letters stating that the AI revolution has barely even started. So
Well, and Nvidia's in the special place because always the goal is you never want to be the one selling gold, you want to be the one selling the shovel, right? And that's what Nvidia is doing. They're not selling gold, they aren't selling the AI, they're selling the shovel. Everybody, so this market hype, it's an arms race for Nvidia cards. I
yeah,
mean, even the war between us and China, if you get into that subject, is going to be the difference of us having more Nvidia chips. Everyone else is lagging behind. Intel missed on this. AMD is desperately trying to catch up, and they're trying to keep themselves in the game, but like Nvidia is just killing everybody on this, and so everybody's reliant on them.